Better late than never. Hello again, everybody. Along with Steve Edwards, I'm Ted Sobel here on Touching Greatness. It's the Broadcasters edition, and it is a total pleasure to have the man who is, well, let's just say he is on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and I'm not, and he deserves it, and I don't. Steve, great to have you, sir.
I have been walked over many times, Ted.
Is that with clean or dirty shoes?
Both. I've been spit upon. I've been whatever. I think I've been stepped on. Ted, pleasure to be here. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, thank you. I just got back from the dentist, and my mouth is just talkable now. It's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly. So
You have half a mouth. So
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
I can only eat on one half, but I could talk on both sides. So, and my mother always said I could talk on both sides of my mouth.
But what's up? What's going on?
Okay, well, let's talk about you a little bit first. Your career, 22 years, Good Day LA. Is that correct?
I think it was 23. Yeah.
23, whatever. That's close enough. And then with that other show you used to do with the travel show, which I absolutely loved, and I hated you for because I'm sure you not one penny came out of your pocket to go to these places. Two on the town, right?
You're talking about Two in the Town, which was not in essence a travel show, but kind of turned into that.
Oh, okay.
Originally, it was a show that was on once a week with me and Connie Chung.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then when it was successful enough, they said, let's, what they used to call strip the show, do it 5 nights a week.
Right.
Connie couldn't do it because she had news duties. So we auditioned and found a woman named Melody Rogers, who was a smash on the show for all the years that she did it. And we did stuff around town. Then we did like one show in San Francisco and the rating was good. And we went to Hawaii and the rating was huge. And
Nice.
then we just, no matter what we do in LA, if we go to Bora Bora, the rating is higher.
Really?
So we'd sit there at the beginning of a season and say, hey, where do we want to go?
Wow.
And we would go, and it was very successful. It was a job at times. I remember being on 57 planes in 59 days.
Wow.
And we still shot stuff in LA. There is the next show that I did. And
yes.
That was with Christina Ferrari.
Yeah.
I left Channel 2 to go to Channel 7. I went to CBS to go to ABC. And hooked up with Christina for AM Los Angeles. We had a great run with that one for about 6 years. And then this is what we do. And then I wrote. And then
that's what my dad used to say. That must be a New York thing. And then I wrote.
Yes. Then, later on, I did this show that was in the dumps. It was called Good Day LA.
In the dumps, really? And you brought it to life.
Well, I'd like to, I was part of it. I went over there. The show had kind of a rating, not good. I went over, it got worse.
Oh, no.
And then I used to say there were 5 morning shows and we were 12th in the ratings.
Oh.
And then things happened. Jillian joined us. Dorothy was already on the show. And then we basically relaxed and broke most of the rules. And it was an annoying show. But it was a very real show. It was like a reality show before reality shows.
Right.
And when we had the news, 9/11, whatever, we were over like a blanket. But so that show had an incredible run. The ratings were and the nice thing about all of this stuff, Ted, is I stay so close to all these people.
It's great.
Everybody we've been looking at here, Christina and Melody and Dorothy and Jillian and Jean and Araxia and Maria Sansone and Maria Quaban, and they became my closest friends, and they still are.
Excellent.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. What the hell is this?
Wow, look at that. Well, my career started long before LA.
Yes, and I wanted to ask you, tell everybody you were in, what was it, Houston? You're a New York guy, went to Houston, then Chicago, then LA. Is that correct?
Well,
is there another one in there?
I was a New York guy.
Yes.
Who went to graduate school at the University of Houston.
Okay, got it.
And I was studying to be a shrink, to be a therapist,
Good. I'll be calling you for other reasons from now on.
Stand in line. And I was studying for a PhD in clinical psychology. And I was on my way to it but I was hesitant about it. I loved behavior. Why are you your way? Why am I my way? Why are people who got all their dreams realized miserable and people who got none of them happy? Why are we two steps away from a fight every moment? What is this all about? That's what guided me and motivated me.
Okay.
And I started doing practice therapy sessions, and I was pretty good at it. But I thought, I don't know that I want this. I had a friend who was a sports writer at the Houston Post named Hal Lundgren. And I'd hang out with him and his friends and, all the sports writers in town. And I was so much more comfortable with them than I was with the people studying for the PhD in psychology. And eventually I said, I want to do something like this. When I was in college, I was a drama major. I was in the theater. And I ended up talking my way into a job in a little FM, back when FM meant forget money, at a little station by the Johnson Space Center, which was then called the Manned Spacecraft Center, KMSC. We used to say, KMSC, we broadcast 100,000 watts in the vertical plane and 100,000 watts in the horizontal plane. I never knew what the hell that meant. I mean, you could hardly get the station 12 miles away, but we were big in the horizontal plane, whatever that. And I listened to a local talk station that I was a fan of, KTRH. And one day I called the guy who ran it, the program director, and I said, I want to come to your station. And he said to me, what's your background? How long have you been in broadcasting? We have professionals with long careers and awards. And I said, honestly, about a minute and a half. What's your educational background? I said, I have a couple of years toward a PhD in clinical psychology. He said, well, come on in and meet with me. So when people said, what did your education do for you? It got me that meeting.
Great.
And I met with this guy, kind of legendary radio figure named Carl Brazell. And we had lunch and we had dinner and we went for drinks that night. And basically I had a career.
Wow. So what kind of a show were you doing? Was it sports? So instead of Dr. Phil, you were sort of Dr. Phil in?
No, I was more, no, you mean like, what's his name? Fred Fillin over on Corruption. What's his name? No, to be accurate, when I was at this little station, it was great because I could do everything. I became the morning man. I became the sports director. There was no sports department, but I got to go to the ball games.
Oh, great.
And sit in the box. I did a 3-hour nightly call-in show called Matter of Opinion. And it was heard, the station had a weird signal. It went about 40 miles up north and it went to Argentina down south. So I had an audience. My audience share of Americans in prisons in South America was huge.
That's great.
It was huge.
But it was a call-in show though, right?
It was a call-in show. I did a bunch of shows, became the program director. Then was quite
that's great.
And then the next step for me was television. And I got into television in Houston, KHOU, and I started as a weekend anchor guy. And a weekend anchor, I did a bunch of sports. Then I started a regular television show. And I got talent scouted and going to Chicago. I didn't want to go to Chicago. I wanted to come to LA. And I went to Chicago and had a tremendous run in Chicago. There's a certain psychology here. Because that wasn't my goal, it was really easy to succeed. And I did so well. I did AM Chicago and I had a Friday night show and I did it. And I left to go to LA.
So it was great, but it wasn't totally satisfying.
It's a weird thing if I think about it.
Yeah.
I worked with a group of people who were my close friends. Remember the name Brandon Tartikoff?
Sure.
All right.
Brandon
was the kid in the promotion department that we became best friends, and he used to drive me to work. And the group I worked with was great. I did some really good. My Friday night show, I once did a show with the Reverend Jesse Jackson and David Duke, the head of the Klan.
Wow.
I mean,
and you're still alive to talk about it.
And I'm still alive to talk about it. It was a great show. Tell you stories about it, but I don't know how much time we have.
No, that's fine.
I'm on with Jesse, and this was the Friday night with Steve Edwards. I'm on with Jesse and David Duke.
Yeah.
And David Duke is doing really well. You know, he's just very slick at this point, very slick, very slick. And Jesse's not doing much. And at some point, and we had an audience for this, at some point, it was a very low level one, but I caught it. Jesse belched.
Okay.
Yeah, a little like that. And it woke him up. And then he went after David Duke.
Wow, interesting.
Started quoting the Bible. He said, then those in the Bible said that Jesus had hair made of wool. Doesn't it indicate maybe he was a black man?
Oh God.
So it was a big deal when the show was done. So I got to do a lot of that stuff, which I love. I love controversy. I love the issues. I also like to play. AM Chicago was a very successful morning show without a lot of cooking or fashion. Imagine that. And we had presidential candidates come through. At one moment, stop me if I'm talking too much.
No, I'm enjoying it. I love stories. It's all about the stories.
One day we did a show, and on the show, George Hamilton was on. All right.
Who I've been trying to reach for several years, by the way. Can't get a hold. I think he's in a tanning salon somewhere.
He's one of the greatest guests you can possibly
really
have.
Wow.
Great storyteller. He's like old Hollywood, not quite old Hollywood, but
I get it.
For us, he's old Hollywood. So we have him on, and he was into the tanning and whatever. And I think he was pushing a face product or something. And we had a thing where suddenly we had all this Gherkin's cream on our face. And then I see out of the corner of my eye, the studio starting to fill up. And on the same show, we had presidential candidate Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
And I see the National and Washington Press Corps coming in. I recognize their faces. They're legendary to me. And I'm the schmuck who's got the white goo all over my face. And I
excuse me, Mr. Carter, can I wash my face first?
Well, no, I see him come in with the Secret Service, and I'm looking, I'm saying, am I an idiot, George? I blame you for this. But we wiped it off and did, it was a great interview with Carter. I mean, it was a very honest interview, because if you realized in simpler times, and man, there were simpler times, he was in trouble because he did a Playboy interview. Remember, he was the first announced born again evangelical Christian to win the presidency, even though he was
liberal. I vaguely remember this.
Even though he was liberal.
Right.
But in an interview, he acknowledged that he's a man and that he has lusted in his heart for other women.
Yes.
And boy, did he catch crap. Now, think of how mild that is compared to where we are now.
He'd get a standing ovation now. What do you mean?
Now, remember, we discussed that at great length. And anyway, so that was Chicago. The world was mine in Chicago, but I wanted to leave. I wanted to come to LA. I mean, that was it. My fantasy was not to go to New York. I got offered stuff in New York, but I was from the Bronx. It wasn't that exotic for me.
Right.
I wanted to come to LA. And I always say, if I hadn't left AM Chicago, Oprah Winfrey would still be in Baltimore.
Oh, that opened the slot.
Yes, that opened the show. Not for me. I was actually replaced by Charlie Rose for a brief period of time. It didn't work that well. And then a young guy named Rob Weller, you know, Rob?
Yeah, I remember Rob, Hollywood guy.
Yeah, exactly. Rob took it over, and then Oprah. The very first day Oprah was on the air there, it wasn't called the Oprah Winfrey Show, it was still AM Chicago. They said, because the memory of me still loomed large at that point. Once Oprah came in, I was totally forgotten. But prior to that,
yes,
they called me and said, would you welcome her on the show from LA? I said, I'd love to, sure.
Nice.
So what's her name? They said, it's Oprah. Oprah. Will you spell it out for me, please? Okay. And they said, but here's the deal. We have a camera at the Orange Bowl parade. So if you can go down in the middle of the parade and go on that camera, now you have to know me. I'm really lazy. I'm really lazy.
Okay.
I know, but please give her my best.
Can we do a Zoom call instead? That would have made it easy.
That's it. I mean, I'm up for Zoom calls.
Exactly.
I've always been a showaholic, but now a workaholic.
I got you.
I'm up to play, to do television shows, radio shows all day long. But if not, I'd rather, leave me alone.
Okay, so you got to tell us, what's the story about this Muhammad Ali thing?
Oh, okay. Muhammad Ali came on the Steve Edwards show in Houston. I had a show at 5 o'clock.
Houston, that's right, TV 11.
Yeah. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, audience, big guests, because in those days, when you didn't have satellites, if somebody's promoting something, they came to Houston, they did my show. It didn't matter if you were running for the presidency or you were Clint Eastwood. You came in and you did the show.
Right.
Muhammad Ali is going to fight at the Astrodome, and he's going to fight who's big heavy guy, whose son also became a heavyweight fighter. I'm going blank on his name right now.
Okay.
Well-known fighter, but he's going to do the show, and but Ali comes on the show, and he's a great guest, and we're having a wonderful time. I was always a boxing. You should know this. I was a stone boxing fan most of my life, so
Okay. Sports guy from New York, that makes sense.
Yeah. And my dad would take me to the fights on Friday night. Just like my baseball story, which we'll probably get into. But
well, for sure.
So Ali's on the show, and we're taking phone calls. And then my floor director said, "Take this call." And a guy cuts on the phone, and he says, "Do you really think you can beat?" I can't remember the name of the fighter he fought. He was a well-known heavyweight. He was heavy. He was heavyweight, a little fat.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of his name.
His son was a heavyweight as well. His son fought Joe Frazier.
Yeah.
He calls him up, and he said, "Do you really think that you can beat him?" And going on, and Ali suddenly catches on that it's the other fighter.
Oh no!
And he says to him, "I know who you are, sucker. I know who you are.
And I'm gonna kick your ass.
When I'm through with you, you're gonna go to the Bureau of Reclamation to handle you." So it was a great show. We had a really good time with Ali. I was such an Ali fan in those days. I supported Ali. I loved his fighting. I was the guy who, in New York, at a certain age, went to the fights every week, either at Sunnyside Gardens in Queens, the small arena, or the Garden on Friday night, Madison Square Garden on Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what my dad used to do. I know you got a chance to read my book. I talked about that in the opening chapter, some of the old fights, and he basically lived there.
I love those old fights, and boxing still had a standing at that point.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It still was relevant. It was relevant up through the 80s, the middleweights and the welterweights and Ali,
Yep.
They had the public's attention. Right now, most people can hardly name a boxer.
Yeah, it's not the same. I don't think it ever will be again. It's just a different world.
Disputed heavyweight champion of the world?
I don't know.
And it's 3-4 belts. He's got them.
I was going to say, which belt are we talking about too?
Alexander Usyk.
Oh, sorry, don't know.
Alexander Usyk is the heavyweight champion. He beat Tyson Fury.
Tyson Fury, I know because I've actually met Tyson.
And he's a character.
He's a really nice guy.
Was a light heavyweight champion, cruiserweight champion, and now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. You know your sports. You don't even know who he is.
No, if he walked up and punched me in the face, I wouldn't know who he is. Oh no, I just lost Steve. Steve, if you hear me, we lost your camera for a second. So I don't know if you're here or not here. You might have hit a button by accident. In the meantime, I'm going to show a few more of these pictures. This is Steve Edwards on Channel 2. Any of these faces look familiar? How about Brent Musburger? And there's Connie Chung again. And again, Steve, if you hear me, we can't hear you or see you, but your name is still on the screen. Connie Chung. I don't remember Mike Parker. I don't think he was here too long, but Ralph Story, one of the great LA icons of all time. That guy had stories about everything in the history of Los Angeles. Nobody did it better. And Bill Stout was the weather guy and reporter. Anyway, these guys were one of the classic teams of all time. I don't see Jerry Dunphy. I figured he would have been in the middle of this thing. I don't know what year this is. I hear you, Steve. Are you there, Steve? We can hear him in the background. He's playing with his Apple phone, which he got for a fill-up over at 76 Union. I don't know what he's doing, but he's trying to get on with. Sorry for this, folks. Technical difficulties. That's what happens sometimes. See that? There's absolutely nothing to show you. But we're going to talk about Steve's background as soon as he does join us in baseball, because he is a New York guy who grew up a Yankees fan, a Dodgers fan, and a little bit a Giants fan, which almost seems crazy that you could be both in New York, Dodgers and Giants, but that's what he was. And but now he is all about the Dodgers, and he is praying for a sweep tonight. And Steve, I hear you fiddling with your phone and have no idea what is going on. If this goes on a lot longer, we can always stop the show and start it over again whenever we can connect. But anyway, these things happen. It's not radio, but it is fake TV. What can I say? And here's more of his shows. This was, again, one of the classic shows, the Two on the Town, Melanie Rogers. They were together for a long time. That's Steve looking a little bit. Who is it, folks? You watching? Who does he look like there? Albert Einstein? No, not the Brainiac. Albert Brooks, whose real name is Albert Einstein. He looks a little bit like Albert Brooks in this shot, I think. Anyway, and there they are again, Two on the Town, doing the travel. I hear something there. Steve's trying to reconnect. And do you hear me, Steve? Oh, he actually joined a different one. That's where you are. Hello, can you hear me okay?
How's the show so far?
It's great. I got the fake Steve Edwards all over the place here, and I'm doing the ramble, baby. Anyway, now I can't hear you. You just did something to your audio. You were on, and now your audio is gone. Turn your audio on. Let me see if I can do anything here. Hang on a second. This is TV at its worst, and it's not TV. Nope. I see your mouth lips and your lips moving. You look like Charlie McCarthy, but for a little bit of an old reference there. I see you great, but there's no audio, just so you know. So play with it. You can disconnect and try to reconnect, because I heard the first couple of words out of your mouth. You might have hit a button by accident. I have absolutely no idea. But again, that's Melanie Rogers with Steve doing one of their travel things. And I've always been jealous of that. It's not even funny. What can I tell you? Let's see here. What else do we have? And this is Steve is the radio guy. And he did a show on KABC for a long time. And he did sports talk on KABC. Didn't you, Steve? You can nod your head yes. Because we can't hear you, but we can see you. Can you see us? Just say yes or no or wave or something. I don't think he could see us now either. Wow. It's getting confusing, folks. I'm going to give him another couple of minutes to see if we can make this happen. Otherwise, we are going to stop the show and try to start over and do a little bit more. We'll have part 2 with Steve Edwards, who has unbelievable stories about growing up a Brooklyn Dodgers fan and hanging out with Jackie Robinson, and just unbelievable stuff. Really sensational. And now he could care less about the Yankees. He is all about the Dodgers. There he is. He's back. Can you hear me? You can hear me, but I don't hear you. There's absolutely no audio, Steve. I think what we're going to do, is I'm going to end this, and we're going to start part 2 in a few minutes, I hope, if we get this figured out. Is that okay with you? Give me an upside. All right. You see that? This is TV at its best, baby. I got a thumbs up from Steve Edwards, meaning part 2 coming up shortly. I promise I'm coming back. I can't promise he's coming back, but I'll be back. See you in a bit. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Part 2 shortly.